Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast podcast, YouTube video interview program that features me talking to some of the best and brightest in the atheist / secular / awesome community. This is episode number 151. I recorded the interview on July 11th, 2018. It's always weird to thank the guest of the previous episode when it's focused on me, so thanks to Jeannie and Chris for coming on and making me feel warm and welcome and all the things that others need medicine to achieve. Tonight may seem like a vanity project, or this week's show. I've known Sharona for 5-ish years. Again, when you meet a person online and then in real life, the origin story can be blurry. She's written for many outlets, done podcasts and YouTube shows for years, and eventually the stress of Gamergate and the Me Too movement compelled her to tell her own stories. She's very candid about depression. I will warn that the audio gets choppy at times. We did a show called Going for Two, which was mainly about the Tennessee Titans, and morphed into fantasy football / whatever show. And I will get that exit interview as a part 2 of this. So it's time for intermission music, intermission music. Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast, Sharona. Now, Sharona is probably the person I've known the longest to have on this show. Note that I didn't say oldest because I've had some fossils on this program. How are you doing, Sharona?
I'm doing a lot better, Zach. Thanks for having me. I was starting to feel left out because you kind of talked about me being on the show, but, it never kind of came to pass. So I'm happy to be here.
You have to wait by your phone. Now, I wanted to keep a tradition alive. Now I'm drinking, this is a cherry beer, because
of course.
Everyone has a thing about me drinking fruity beers, as does Jeannie in the chat room. But we'll get to the good stuff, but this is the beginning. What do you have, what are you drinking on your side?
I am drinking citrus green tea because I quit drinking. That's part of the reason why I've been a little MIA. I've been sick, very sick, and so I had to quit drinking, and so I'm sort of supplementing. I'm helping my taste buds out a little bit with green teas because, I didn't really, all I would drink would be like my coffee in the morning, and then I would drink water through the day, and, in the evenings typically I would have something, alcoholic, and so that kind of gave my taste buds a little bit of a break from sort of the blandness of water. So I've been using green teas, and I found some of this Crystal Light that you can put in water, and that's really kind of helped. So it's all right. Little break.
That's like an entire closet in our house is water flavorings.
Yeah.
That's
Allison.
That's her rule now. Yeah. She has to alternate kind of eating and drinking, and she has to remind herself to drink. I don't have to remind myself to drink, which is nice. But the last time we talked, the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl because they were more Jesus-y than the New England Patriots, or they were the better team, or scored the most points.
Or the refs couldn't help the Patriots out enough.
Yeah, I bring on Sharona because we did once do a show together. Originally, what was it originally called? It's like trivia.
The Haters Show. Sharona and the Hater.
It was called Sharona and the Hater. But as time went on, we agreed on Going for Two, a play on your show, The Extra Point, I think.
Yeah.
But now we'll call it a hiatus.
Yeah, because you keep saying used to. Either you need to make up your mind. Either it's over. Of course, I understand. I've been kind of gone, missing from the sports world, and I think you didn't, know what to do with that. And but I enjoyed talking sports still with you. But we'll figure it out, I suppose. But it is very much a grind doing a weekly show. And of course, when I was in sports and we were doing our show, I was doing a podcast 2 and 3 times a week. And, it was, yeah. You don't mind if I use my back scratcher, do you? Because my back is itching.
At least you were nice enough not to say that it's a grind doing a show with me every week. I appreciate that.
I enjoyed doing the show, but I mean, it's easier for men because, you would come in sometimes sweaty, and I know, you didn't want to be all sweaty and everything, but, for women, I mean, we got to get all gussied up and shower and, put makeup on and try to be all pretty and as pretty as we can and all of that. And, that does kind of get old, but it's all good. It was fun.
It's probably your fault that I do it the YouTube version just because that was the only way I knew to record a show. So that's the way it is, and the video is there, and occasionally the guest doesn't want to be on camera, but for the most part, yeah, it is a bit unbalanced, and I'm sure we'll cover that a little bit on the show tonight. Now, have I ever thanked you for getting me into Dragon's Milk, which is my special beverage of the evening? This is what real beer looks like.
Not adequately enough, I don't think, but you're welcome. It's very good. It's a nice beer. I still have one or two in the fridge. I still have, God, my hair is going crazy. I chopped it all off a few months ago. It's grown back out quite a bit. I still have a big bottle of that Rogue chocolate stout. And I thought about, I was like, old times maybe, but I'm still trying. My body's still trying to recover from my last bout with illness. And so I was like, I really don't think that it's ready, for that. But maybe sometime, we'll sit down and have a beer together and chit-chat about sports or something. So I'm doing the green tea thing.
Or something else.
Or something,
So what happened? I mean, was it that made you decide? Because you've kind of been like, maybe not, you're definitely not on the Zach Law drinking program. Usually you would only drink on the show, and then occasionally you wouldn't drink on the show.
Yeah.
I was just wondering what happened in real life to make you go, I'm done with this.
Well, Zach is the only person to know about a really kind of terrible incident that happened to me several years ago. And, because of that, I went through a period where I drank real heavily. I drank heavy stuff, and I drank real heavily and was basically trying to drink myself to death. And I almost succeeded. And so I haven't done that I got past that and quit drinking so heavily, but, the damage was done, and my body just can't metabolize alcohol like it should. And I've been kind of having trouble with my gallbladder. And so the combination was just so severe that I just can't do it. The last time I tried, I ended up sick in bed for like a week. And so, it was either, Sharona, are you literally going to drink yourself to death, or are you going to not? And I chose not to. So
I agree with this choice. But you do feel better now?
yeah, a lot better, thanks. It was when you battle depression lies to you, and it tells you that things are not what they are, and so you have to really try and separate things and make sure that the decisions that you're making and the things that you're doing are correct. And I was just in denial about it. So, once I finally figured out that was, part of the reason why I was having such severe health problems, it sort of made the decision a little bit better. Yeah. So, fun stuff. I know.
I know. We have a nice light, easy show tonight, too.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's the reality.
But one of the reasons we got along so well is not just because we're friends, because did a show, and because we like the same football team, and we like the same beer eventually. But it was that you also wrote a lot,
Yeah.
which I used to do more myself too. What happened there? But you've been on a bit of a writing hiatus, but it sounds like you're getting back. What makes you? Because it's really, for me, it's hard sometimes. Well, this show I just ask questions. It was really easy, but having to like talk about myself and especially like things I don't like about myself or things that are tough can be difficult. What made you decide to kind of get back into writing and to kind of talk about depression and like what you've been going through in the past, I don't know, it sounds like a few years?
So yeah, so my depression goes back probably about 20 years. But at the time that it started, I didn't, again, depression lies to you. I was in such denial about the fact that, I had this disease, this thing. um, so yeah, I lived with it for a long, long, long time. And when you have it, there are times when it kind of goes into remission and it's not so bad. So you're able to tell yourself, oh, you're fine, things are okay. But with the Me Too movement, with women now more than ever, speaking up and speaking out about, the things that have happened to them, I kind of felt obligated because I have been very vocal about, supporting victims and victims' rights, that, I should share my story. But it's really hard sometimes to talk. So, so when the Me Too, I was like, okay, so, and I read a story. The reason why I was able to open up to Zach about what had happened to me was that I had read a story that another woman had written. And I was like, oh, what me? And I was like, it helped me so much to realize that my feelings and what I was going through was valid. So I was like, okay, I've got to do this because I've got to help I've got to help someone. I've got to help other people. But when I tried to do it, I just couldn't. My anxiety flared up so badly that I just couldn't do it. And it got so bad that I just couldn't write anymore. I couldn't. It was too hard. But now that I'm doing better and feeling better, I feel that obligation to share, what had happened to someone else.
Yeah, the connection's a little bit dodgy at the moment, but
Sorry.
I'm glad that it's on both sides. But I was just thinking, like, it's not just depression and talk about personal stuff. Like, you were a content machine for a while. Like, you were doing multiple podcasts, you were
Yeah.
writing, you were editing. And at a certain point, it's like, can you keep this momentum going? And I think you made the right choice for yourself, which is like, okay, how about me time?
Yeah, no, I think you give so much of yourself and, especially when you care about what you're doing. And I certainly, at the time I cared so much about sports and cared, so much about, you know, making things better, for, you know, not just for women, but for men too. I thought, when let me back up a little bit. So, when I first started doing sports, it really kind of was a labor of love, okay? And I loved doing it, and, a lot of it was fun. And then there became kind of a crossover between, my hair is driving me nuts. I've got this one little hair that keeps trying to stick itself in my eye. So then there became this crossover, right, with the Ray Rice incident. And, because I had some experience and I felt like I had some knowledge to share, you know, it would be helpful to everyone, not just other women, but, maybe to help men understand a little bit better. I'm not sure that some men want to be informed. I've learned that a little bit the hard way. But yeah, you give so much of yourself that, and I did. I gave a lot to try to do that. I didn't really take care of myself nearly enough until, I was kind of forced to.
Well, we talk about sports in the recent time, and of course, you say Ray Rice, and that's a name that people know who don't even pay attention to football, probably.
Yeah.
But for you, why were sports so important for you as you were growing up and you were a bandwagon Dallas Cowboys fan?
I sort of grew up in Texas. My early years were spent in Texas. Let me see if this doesn't help my connection a little bit. And so that was something that she and I did together. And so it was kind of always a part of my life. And then I always had like guy friends who were like, oh, you should do sport. You know way more than I do. You should do sports and stuff. And so, I started doing it a little bit, blogging a little bit. And then, because of what was going on, some of the things that I shared with Zach and I sort of touched on a little bit a few minutes ago because of sports, as an outlet. From that, I hate to use the word escape, but it sort of was. I mean, that and drinking were kind of an escape from, some of the other things that were going on. So yeah, and it was fun for a while, and then it just became not so fun.
But was it the kind of news, the fact that real life, domestic abuse and issues like that are happening? Was it more personal? Was it kind of a combination of the two that made sports kind of take a back seat? Or at least, you weren't the fanatic that the term fan actually means anymore.
Well, when I got into it and started writing about sports and whatever, I always just wanted to be an analyst. Stupid personality. I wanted to be an analyst. I thought, that I had an opinion that, might be valuable. And, at the time, I just didn't realize how much opposition there was to women having an opinion about sports. But if I had it to do over again, I would certainly do some things differently. But, I enjoyed that part. I enjoyed watching film. I enjoyed it. So yeah, it was, I don't want to say that it was a goal or anything like that, but it was certainly something that I aspired to.
Yeah, there was a lot of...
I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, there was a lot of backlash, like a female announcer for like an NFL game.
So bad. What's that?
So there was such a backlash for there being like a female announcer of the game. It's like, well,
I know.
You can have the sideline woman, but she's got to be attractive to a certain level. And we don't want her to talk that much. We don't really ask a lot of questions because it's almost like
I don't even know why. I don't even know why they still do the sideline reporter thing at all. I mean, does anybody really enjoy that aspect of it? annoyed about it. I mean, I don't know. Excuse me, I don't know what that adds to the broadcast, but women had certainly traditionally filled that role, and yes, they had to be a certain mold. That was not anything that I aspired to do.
Well, was it since I brought this up to you in our Twitter DMs? Was it something that meant something to you that to hear that Allie Wagner did a lot of the broadcasts for the World Cup? I mean, she did. It seemed like they had 3 or 4 main teams, and she was one of them. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I mean, because in major sports, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, I think you cut out a little bit, but I mean, women. I do know, even though I haven't been all tuned in, so to speak, to sports, I do know that there are more and more women, in the booth. Oh gosh, Beth. Ugh, her name is escaping me. I apologize to her for not remembering her last name. It's like it starts with an M. And then you got the
Beth Mowens?
yes, thank you very much.
Gosh, yeah, I
Yes.
just looked it up and said she announced that was because in the National
Yeah.
Football League opening weekend they do a double header Monday night, which they only do once a year, and on the late night game that starts at like 10 o'clock my time, they let a woman do it. But that was, I think, it. And it was the first time in 30 years. I was like, wow, they did it 30 years ago? Huh.
Yeah, I mean there there are a lot of strides being made, certainly. But there's definitely a lot of opposition, you know. I don't really want to share some of the experiences that I had because I've learned kind of the hard way that, when I would share things like that, I would do it hoping that it would be a learning experience. But, a lot of people take that personally, like it's an attack or whatever. And, I'm not in the business of having beef with anybody. I don't want, I'm at that point where, I want peace. I don't want to be out here beefing with anybody. I just want to have, some peace so that, I can continue to get well and, hopefully come back. I'm hoping that, someday that I will love sports as much as I used to. But I just don't. It doesn't have the same interest to me that it did. And there are a lot of reasons for that, not just what I went through personally, but, just the hypocrisy of the NFL got to me. It just, it was just vomit inducing. I was just so over, the blackballing of Colin Kaepernick, and I guess Eric Reed now. I mean, it got to be too much. And I was like, why am I putting, myself and my health through all of this for what? What am I getting out of this? What is this? What is the end game here for me? When, you know, um, I put so much effort into the things that I was doing and it didn't seem to be making much of an impact. And, the people that, yeah, anyway, that's all I should probably say about that.
Well, why do you think that people feel like entitled to have like sports as this safe space where they don't have to deal with like politics or real life issues? And it
No,
can
they don't want to deal
be
with
like a percentage.
it's not that they don't want to deal with politics. They don't want to deal with opinions that are different from their own. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the bottom line. And that is an issue across America, across the world, really. But we'll talk about America. I sent Zach an article that was written by I think Kyle Wagner at Deadspin. I RT'd it if you want to find it in my timeline. But it was talking about Gamergate, and it's the same thing. You know, Gamergate, what is called Gamergate is the future of the culture wars, and it was, I think, 2014, and it was right. And there is a segment. Kyle Wagner said a small segment. I'm not sure that I wonder how
It's vocal,
populous
it's not small, yeah.
it is, and it wields power in a way that is frightening. But I digress. This segment literally cannot stand to hear opinions that are different from their own, that are different from the status quo, that basically, white Caucasian males are in charge, should be in charge, should dictate what everyone else does. And that's the bottom line.
I want to do a mild digression, and then we're going to dive into this a little more. I like this because, like, I love it when my guest is like, "Hey, that question you have two questions down now." But first of all, why do we call everything Gate? Like, the Watergate was the name of a hotel.
Yeah.
They did Deflategate with Tom Brady and the footballs, and it's just Deflate. I don't get the Gate part.
I don't know what.
I know it's. What was it? A Baldwin? It was like the Baldwin who like was on a show I liked, but it turned out to be like a total asshole. But that's okay as long as you're in Hollywood and you're the kind of asshole people like. You're cool, like James Woods, but we won't go there. Okay. So
See that he lost his agency. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Gamergate, because you are and I'd say a very authentic gamer. That is something that is a hobby of yours.
Huge.
I wouldn't even say hobby because I don't know if I can compare it to like what fantasy football is to me because it's like it's more than that.
Yeah.
Were you kind of aware in that time frame of what was happening and what was starting? Because we've been kind of cooking it for a while, and it was a small portion of the internet, but I feel like it's definitely taken mainstream.
I was very aware, and and I talked about it. Okay. It was a very legitimate, still is a very legitimate threat, and there were people in the industry who literally would not talk about it because of how serious of a threat it was. That's all I'll say.
A quick, like, since you're more in this than I am, like, what kind of kicked it off? Because obviously it's it's all about ethics and gaming journalism is what I hear. But what kind of got this started and what made it into, a big cultural event?
Well, to go even beyond Gamergate, there is a back channel of internet website. Not all that familiar with the dark web, but there is a back channel of internet websites and forums and chat rooms that young men primarily visit, and they become indoctrinated into some really nefarious, it's really scary stuff. So, and that's where some of this, kind of was born and grew. There was a gaming. It's in that article. I'll try to remember the details as best I can. There was a gaming developer. Her name was Zoe Quinn, I believe, and a false story. I think she had a relationship. They broke up. This guy wrote a false story about her trading sex for favorable coverage of a video game that she had done, which was not even true. The person that she was accused of trading favors with didn't even review her game. But truth has very little importance to this segment of the populace, and it was far more about getting rid of this woman who expressed views that were very different from them, that they felt like challenged their frail little, and they basically, they doxed her. She got threats. Other women gamers who defended her got there was so I mean there were people that were afraid to defend her because of what these guys were doing, and so this whole movement grew around it. I wonder. This was, oh gosh, 8, 9, 10 years ago when all this was beginning. Wonder if we'd had the courage to speak up more then, if things would be different, but we didn't. The gaming industry left these women largely. I mean, Brianna Wu, she had to move out of her house for a while. She got death threats. People were posting her, personal information. They threatened to rape both of them. It was bad stuff.
Was it Anita Sarkeesian was also
She
involved?
was involved. Yeah, she was involved.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a very popular secular convention coming up, and it's kind of turned into a everybody on that Gamergate side. But it all came up by this desperate need to listen to both sides.
I should say this. Gamergate carries different meaning to different people. I think that just like, excuse me, it's like anything that, like feminism or the Black Lives Matter movement, when you have a diverse group of people stretched out over a wide territory, it's hard. There's so many different people in there that a lot of ideas get thrown in under that umbrella that maybe aren't necessarily true to what the ultimate goals was. I can't speak so much to Gamergate, but we'll use feminism as an example, okay? Women who identify as feminists, it's not like, and I do, hello, it's not like we sit down and elect a leader, right? Nobody really sits. You have people who become prominent for, maybe the press chooses them. I certainly didn't choose what's her name? Amy Schumer, or the girls writer, Lena
Dunham. Oh yeah.
Listen, they're
Lightning
not.
Rod, yeah.
They're not my leaders, okay? They may identify as feminists. They may have some feminist ideals. Ain't nobody sat down and elected them our fucking leader, okay? But the press certainly doesn't help creating these false dichotomies by saying feminist leader. She ain't my fucking leader.
Yeah,
Pardon my French.
There's a definite, you can curse on this show, trust me. There's a definite push to kind of attack, I guess it'd be called straw manning, straw manning for feminism. Okay, straw womaning, where you attack the weakest version, or even a fake version of somebody else's argument.
You don't have to say, I don't have a problem with female or anything like that, but anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's about time. Yeah. But there's an attack on a bad argument, and then it becomes oh, this is what feminism is, like Lena Dunham. I don't think.
Yeah,
how many people? She's 26 or something, and got a show on HBO.
Yeah, but then you have people who
everything she says, becomes magnified.
Yeah, but then you have people who oppose equality for women, using her as an example. Oh, and it's like, listen, it's just all dumb.
That would be a good quote right there. It's just all dumb.
So,
But let's talk about the
Humans
good side of gaming,
humans
okay?
are vastly overrated as creatures of reason and kindness and empathy. Anyway, yeah, I'm a huge gamer. Gaming is fun. I think we talked about this a little bit on Going for Two. I am certainly not an expert in matters of anxiety and depression, except by living with it. And kind of why that's my next writing project. I want to write about my battle with depression and how I was in denial and how I kind of came to this realization, hopefully to help people understand. But I don't know why this is true. I just know that it is. Gaming is very soothing and helpful for people who struggle with anxiety and depression. It is amazing how much it is helpful. And then, it can be fun.
Well, what do you have to say about this? So, Don, I hope Don's listening, and
Hi,
we need to
Don.
bring up Don's name because Don was like the one listener, watcher every week of Going for Two.
He was. And he
I
came
think
on
just
once,
because
twice.
he wanted to be mentioned, like if we could mention his name, pretty much we could just call it the Don Show. I think he would have liked that.
Yeah.
But Don, I had given him my Wii, Nintendo Wii, a couple of years ago, and I asked for it back. And I've been going through the back catalog. Is that something you do? Like you find a game that you may have not played in like 5 years
Oh, yeah.
and go from beginning to end. And in some cases, you don't. There's a game called The Blob, and the thing about the Wii games was you move the controllers. And in one of the first version of the game, every time you jumped, you had to move your arm, and that got kind of annoying. And I liked in the second game where you just had to hit buttons instead. So I like gave up that version. But have you? Is it like a nostalgia thing to go back
Oh,
and
sure.
play a game that you played 10 years ago? And say, I'm going to take this down and go, this game's easy, and then go, whoa, wait a second, that's a little harder than I thought. I barely remember this part. No.
I, I'm trying to think. There are very few games. There are some. Very few games that I play that aren't part of a continuing series. And the games that I play the most are. The games that I play the most are the Mass Effect series, which I'm not sure Andromeda didn't do that well. I liked it. I still play it some. I don't know what they're going to do with that franchise, but and the Fable franchise, I didn't like that last game. I forget what it was called, but anyway, the Elder Scrolls series, and they just announced that they're coming out with a new solo standalone game. But they've got this online MMO game that I play that we've talked about, Zach, and then the Dragon Age game and Inquisition. I wrote. I've kind of tossed around the idea of maybe writing. I've written about gaming before, maybe writing about that as part of not as part of that one article that I've been working on in my brain. I think everybody has a different writing thing. I go by outlines, and so um, sometimes I'll let something gestate for a good, 2 or 3 months before I actually sit down to write about it. And sometimes it's just a quick, pop, 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 and there it is. This thing that I've been wanting to write about depression, I've spent a good while thinking about, trying to figure out. I don't want it to be too heavy. I mean, we were a little heavy at the beginning, and I'm sorry I got so emotional, but it's kind of an emotional thing for me. But, I want to keep that a little bit separate, but, maybe talk about how, in a different article, how gaming has really kind of helped me, through this process and, through the whole, getting better thing. So, but yeah, there is definitely a nostalgic aspect to it. And there's a game. The game that got me started in the Elder Scrolls series was a game called Morrowind. It was the original Morrowind. I think it came out 2000, 2002, somewhere. Maybe it was 2002. They recently, like in the last 3 or 4 months, 5, 6 months, recently remastered it, re-released it on the Xbox One. You can play the actual game, put the disc in and play the actual game, and it is amazing. And I played it for a pretty good while. I haven't played it all the way through to the end, pretty close, but I will. You know, I kind of bounce around a little bit when
Well,
I play.
I have like the Nintendo Classic, which is like the thing Nintendo came out with and didn't make enough of, and it has like 30 of the old games. It's not the old hockey game, which was one of my favorites. I still have that on the Wii. But there's something to be said to just play the old, like Dr. Mario is the one because it's kind of their version of Tetris. And it is something I'll do if I walk in place because I don't have to pay total attention to it, and it's fine. But it's something good. It's like there's this Goldilocks zone of a game. Like it has to be challenging enough, but you shouldn't die every 3 seconds.
I almost got, I don't know if I've even told you this. I almost got a Switch, which I don't understand. I have my original Nintendo. It's right, I'm looking at it right now. It's sitting right over there. I've been threatening to get it out and see if I can't get it hooked up and working again. I mean, I have my original Xbox, but I gave some serious thought to getting a Switch, but I ended up getting a PlayStation 4 instead because I have a PlayStation 3 and I play those games and stuff. So, you know, maybe someday we'll Nintendo together. Who knows?
Someday.
Someday. But yeah, I love the Mario games. You know, I didn't care much. I haven't played Mario Kart because I don't have a new system, and I didn't really enjoy Super Mario 2 all that much. But I enjoyed 1 and 3. I played the shit out of 3. I loved that game.
Yeah, those are two
Duck Hunt.
that are on there. I finished the first one, but not the third, and then I'm playing the Wii version, which is kind of just a slightly better technological version. But this is a key question for our friendship.
Oh.
How did I make you into a cat person?
Oh my God, you motherfucker. I have gone so about 5 years ago I moved back home. My father was sick and needed someone to help take care of him, and it was a good opportunity for me to get away and try and get better myself. So anyway, I moved back home. I've been taking care of my father, who's very sick, and we originally we just adopted 2 little stray boy cats, and you know, I don't even know how. I know how that happened. They're just little shitheads who worm their way into your heart, and you just can't help it. So, and at that time, I had a dog. She was getting older. She was sick. I ended up having to put her down, but a mama cat brought her little baby. She'd just had a litter, and this little cat was the runt of the litter, and she was sick. She was very sick, so I nursed her back to health. And mama cat would come and check on her and, you know, see how she's doing and stuff. And so once little baby cat got better, I put her back outside, gave her back to mama. Well, a few weeks later, she showed back up, and she was malnourished and sick again. And so I took her back in and nursed her, and she just never left. And so she's been, you know, part of our family too. So, you know, and now we just have cats, and it's like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, because he just finished his. So I'm not all that familiar with cats. I mean, it was my Smokey, my little baby. You're not supposed to have a favorite, but I do, and it's Smokey. And so, Smokey one Friday was throwing up a lot, but he kind of does that. He gets, hairballs and stuff and kind of throws up. And I didn't really think that much of it, but by that night, you could tell something was wrong. He was in pain. He was not eating. And I was worried to death. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't sleep hardly any that night. So the next morning, I was like, I'm going to take him to the vet. So the next morning, he was not better. So I took him to the vet, called the vet, and took him to the vet. And it's so weird because it's very nice. We're in the office and, we're chit chatting and, it's just like, what's going on with Smokey? And so she's examining him and we're talking and she feels his belly and she's like, oh, his bladder's very, very, I don't even, distended or whatever. I don't remember what she was like, all business and like leaving the room. And she said, oh, he has a blocked bladder. And she was like, she just left the room immediately and it was all business. And I was like, where's my phone? Like Googling blocked bladder and stuff. And so he was very sick. And if I hadn't taken him that morning, he would have died. So she had to keep him. They had to keep him for like 5 days, and he had to take medicine. But he's fine now. He's doing all right. And then he came home with a cold. I told Zach, he gave me his. He tried to give it to me and Bandit both. I don't know if you can get colds from cats, but we both definitely had it. So, and it was funny because I had to take him when I went to pick him up. Her assistant, we were talking, he was like, so this is the antibiotic and this is something, a muscle relaxer, and this is Valium. And I was like, hey, listen, man, you should be giving me the Valium because this has been stressful. So he was on some good medicine, but yeah, it was something else.
So what are the names of all your cats?
So we have Smokey and Bandit are the two little boys. Well, two boys. They're not so little anymore. They were all in here a little bit earlier. I sent them out. And then the littlest one, the little baby, she's not a baby anymore, but she's so tiny, especially compared to them. Her name is Iggy.
Excellent. Well, the Zachrilege cast portion of the show will be over shortly, but we will continue with some Going for Two talk. But I forgot to ask you this in advance, so I will not totally put you on the spot. Do you have a joke to share with the audience?
Do I have a joke?
Yeah.
No. Oh,
Nah.
yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Wow. Came in, the insight.
So, the news today is that Fox Sports is in negotiations to hire Jeff Fisher as a commentator, which, as we know, you'll probably only be able to make 7 out of the, 16 games and not make the playoffs. So, hey, boom, boom. I can't take credit for that. It was in the comments to that, but I screamed with laughter. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, we'll have to do some more Jeff Fisher material pretty soon. So I have a joke, and I will do it now. What would Superman be called if he were a thief?
I don't know.
The Man of Steel.
Oh my God.
Come on, no? All right. Well, thank you for being on the Zachrilege cast portion.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to continue talking about Going for Two, but I'm going to break this up into 2 parts just for the audio people. But let's go ahead and keep going for the people who are actually in the chat room. Weird. So intermission music. Live read. So if you have the Netflix, sorry, that's what my cousin calls it, there are 2 programs you should check out. The first is a comedy special called Nanette. Hannah Gadsby is the comedian. Over the years, I've grown to like stand-up less and less. I'd call this maybe half a comedy special and half a spoken word presentation. Hannah talks honestly and painfully about being lesbian in a part of Australia that isn't tolerant. She talks about how self-deprecating humor that she used in the past isn't ultimately good for her. It keeps her in a lesser position. I can relate to that in the small corner of my life that is non-belief. I'll leave the description and tell you to check it out, and if you also want a recap of that, you can listen to this week's Serious Inquiries Only featuring Callie Wright, and it's a pretty good episode. Also, I think I'm the last person to see the Netflix documentary Wild Wild Country. As I was going on my walk this morning and thinking about what I'd write or say this week, I heard Cogdis do an entire episode recapping the Netflix documentary about a cult that started a city in rural Oregon, and things did not go well. What is a cult? How does it form? How does it go badly? And once the government gets involved, it's going to have a negative resolution. It's really fantastic, and it's 6 episodes, and it's worth your time. So, show comment of the week from YouTube. I know there was a good one, sort of. Heather1A tells me that cacao in my beer, spelled C-A-C-O-A, isn't the same thing as cocoa, which is C-O-C-O-A. I certainly said that about as well as it was described. That's what Google is for, people. Random, out of time YouTube comment of the week. Anthony Nuzzo commented on my Kelly and Jim Helton interview. That's episode 144, so that's 2 months ago. Saying that we should be civil when telling Ken Ham that he's wasting taxpayer money on a genocide and incest park. Oh, sorry, need to be civil. A biblically accurate park about the time God drowned the world, except for 8 people and an unclear number of animals. Listener of the week, Randy Lamonda, for telling me, and this is on Twitter, that I shouldn't mess with my show length. Did you hear that, America? Randy thinks my length is just right. Want to support the show? Be like Bobby, Hugh, Teody, Larry, Daryl, and the other Daryl, and one of those is me, and support the show on patreon.com/Zachrilege, Zachrilege. Follow me on Twitter, like the Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook, and send all non-recipes to zachrilege.cast@gmail.com. Thank you to Sharona for joining this episode. I will include all the links since I forgot to ask her because, well, we used to do a show together, so I was a little distracted at interviewing her. Take care of yourself, and when you see things go off the rails, find help.